This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Welcome back to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with your host, David Charlton. And today we're going to get back on track with a full-on interview. My guest is Nick Jonsson, who is the author of a book called Executive Loneliness. And we're going to unpick various different themes in this book. He's going to talk about the challenges that senior executives face. He's going to talk about his own individual and personal battles and demons. We also chat a lot about self-care and the importance of sharing your vulnerabilities and talking to other people. Nick is a very inspiring guy. I really do hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Nick. It's great to meet you. Would you be able to share with the listeners a little bit about your background and your interest in executive loneliness, and perhaps share your motivation for writing a fantastic book as well on the topic?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, David, for inviting me. And I was born in Sweden, educated in Australia, and then I lived and worked most of the last 20 years in Southeast Asia, where I worked my way up as an executive. And these days I'm a business owner, though, so my life have changed, and it changed dramatically due to a mental breakdown and health breakdown that I had a couple of years ago when I hit my rock bottom. And since then I rebuilt my life and really being cautious about both mental and also physical health and also emotional health, and very much aware about what I'm doing. And the book I wrote a couple of years ago then was in memory of a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine from the UK who worked in Singapore, who died of suicide. And that really made me rethink also that we need to speak up if we are not feeling well, and we need to have some safe spaces around us, people who we dare to talk and be ourselves and be honest with. So that's a little bit about me.
You touched on something there in terms of just having people to talk to, and so was that expressing your feelings there. Did you find that a difficult transition when you looked at it?
Yes, so I think naturally we live, many of us, at least executives in the professional world, perhaps by what I call in my book a smiling depression, where many times we're putting up this beautiful facade of what life is like, but then behind the scene it's not really the real truth, and then constantly trying to run that show, and it's almost like you're an actor, you're not really yourself, and not being your authentic self is really, really tiring and painful and drainful. And what I realized when I wrote the book, that this was not only the case for me, it was many people, especially men then who I'm interviewing, who felt like this, and they felt it's really difficult for them to have honest conversations based on trust. They were not sure, who can I have these conversations with? If I talk to my boss or my HR, maybe I won't get the next promotion. And then they didn't want to bother the wife or the partner at home, and therefore it was very difficult for them to have these conversations.
I'm guessing this has shaped the decision around your career now and what it is that you're actually doing right now.
Yes, indeed, David. And when I had my breakdown a few years ago and patched back my life, it was thanks to the support of coaches, mentors, sponsors, people and organizations who were there and really, to help each other and support each other with a service mindset. And then that's the path I wanted to take as well. So these days I'm running a company called EGN, Executive Global Network, in Singapore, Indonesia and Malaysia, where we have confidential peer groups, either for executives or for business owners, so that you can speak with like-minded about your work-related challenges before they become painful. And what we are really practicing then is that people should, speak up about the challenges. And they do that because everyone signed a non-disclosure agreement. The meetings are confidential. We facilitate them. And really everyone should leave these sessions perhaps having some notes, things they can take back and implement in the business right away. And that's something that I didn't have in my life when I was working. And I can just see the difference for the people that have this support structure in place.
Yeah, I suppose there's something as well about being in that group environment where you're sharing things with like-minded people as well. That must be really, really powerful.
Absolutely. And what we basically do is each session have a topic of the day part where you have a discussion and so on to warm up everyone. But then we have like a hot seat or an advisory board where you take turns. So every session there will be one of the group members who have then prepared a few slides and they go up and present a case study. It might be that they have a conflict in the team or they want to present perhaps the expansion plan or the exit plan of the business. And then the rest of the group then question it, and then they will break out in groups, discuss it, and come back to present a couple of suggestions and so on. So in that sense, you're really feeling that, you're exposed. It's, as they say, you're only as sick as your secrets. And if you are the business owner and executive and you have this huge challenge, but you haven't spelled it out yet, you haven't spoken it out, then it's only your problem. But as soon as you spell it out and you speak to the group there, then everyone will get involved in trying to solve you. And that's when you normally can just see they almost lifting from the chair and they shining up, smiling, and just feeling, overwhelmed almost by the positive support.
Yeah, because I suppose just thinking about it, essentially you've got a weight off your shoulders, haven't you? Which, if we go back, can we go back to, you mentioned about having an emotional breakdown? Would you like to discuss that a little bit more and maybe consider what we've just been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2015, I was going through some difficult times in my work. I had been promoted. I was doing really well. But in my new role also, I was taking on more finance responsibility, things I was not really comfortable with. It involved analyzing spreadsheets and so on. And I wasn't very familiar with that. And the issue was that I didn't speak up. Kept it secret. And while I was doing really well in the sales and business development part of the role, and so I didn't want this to be overshadowed by the challenges I had in Excel, for example. And I just didn't say anything. And, I put in so much effort trying to hide then and cover up of the mistakes I did and so on. It was so draining that in the end, I was also, my life was falling apart at home. I went through divorce and so on. And in the end, I just couldn't take the job pressure then. And I resigned from the job. And what happened then when I was in a divorce, resigned from a job, then I lost my good habits, my good eating disciplines, my exercise routine also faded away from me. I started exercising less, and instead I went to the bar. I thought I should go out and socialize, meet some friends and so on. And that was a downward slippery slope for me. It took about a year until I gained a lot of weight, and I was not fit to do the races that I loved, the triathlons, the Ironman events. I had signed up for races which I didn't show up for. And I was hitting then a depression. I was getting panic attacks. And before I knew it, I didn't really know what was home anymore. So that was when I started to really become addicted to alcohol. And I became at that stage an alcoholic, and I hit what I would say in early 2018, my rock bottom.
Sounds obviously a really, really tough. And how did you manage to pull yourself out of that?
Well, they say that I received the gift of desperation. Many times that's what we need to in order to be able to really make drastic change, and that's what happened then. And in April 2018, at that stage, I've written my will, my testament. I just thought that life was over. I didn't know how I would be able to break out from the alcohol addiction, the depression, and everything else. I also was not satisfied with my job. I was filled with anxiety, jumping from one job to another. And luckily at that stage, though, I had met someone who is today my new wife, and I told her how I felt and what I was feeling, and she was shocked and surprised because on the outside she couldn't see anything of that at all. She thought I was very confident and having a great time. What happened then was that she immediately took me to a doctor, and she told the doctor what I had told her. So suddenly here within 24 hours, I was exposed twice. Then the next day she brought me to a common friend of ours who had some issues with alcohol addiction a few years earlier. And here it was then the third time I was exposed. And while it was scary, it also meant that people were starting to support me. And then just a few days after that, I was also in a recovery meeting for people with alcoholism. And there I was sitting around the table listening to other people, many successful business people, athletes also, who had gone through challenges like this themselves. And they were now well and fit and in a better shape than ever before. So then I sort of felt, well, I'm not the only one here. And I got the support I needed. And it was really from there on a V-shaped recovery. And I just lived the best days of my life ever since, just being so grateful for what life has to offer.
But yeah, it's very inspiring what you're talking about there, the way you've turned it around. So yeah, pat on the back to you there.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, in terms of where you talk about the sharing vulnerabilities, do you think in senior roles, and again, you could transfer this over to sport and people in I suppose who've got a big presence with the media, do you think trying to be perfect and essentially the super high commitment levels that are required play a big part in this?
Yes, it does. And I mean, the foundation of the recovery program I came into was to really, everyone said, this is a program for progress, not perfection. And I think many senior executives indeed, and also athletes, are extremists, driving for perfection, always being so hard on themselves and looking really down on themselves after failures. And what do you do then once you've failed yourself if you don't have the tools and the people around you to deal with that? And then it can easily turn into a negative self-talk, and people use bad habits and perhaps addiction. Then it can be drugs, alcohol, sex, social media, or anything else, gambling and so on, that people fall into. And that's what I see in senior executives, and also I see it in athletes in the life I live now, where I'm surrounded by many athletes that who operate at a high level. When they fall off or retire or get injured, then it's very easy that bad habits creep in very quickly.
Yes, but especially when you're talking about athletes there, they'll go from being part of a team or just having a very strict routine to then nothing really, which must be really, really difficult.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about being hard on yourself. So how do you combat that now?
I'm trying to be very proactive these days with how I patch up my life. And I talk a lot about that we need to have the safe spaces or safe places. What I mean with that is a professional network, which we build up with people like us. If we are a business owner, then we should have these groups where we train ourselves and practice to be vulnerable and open-minded. We should also have safe spaces as personally. In my case, for example, I had great friends before, but we would go and play golf or go and watch sport and have a good time and drinking some beers together, and we wouldn't just share what was really on our mind. We wouldn't discuss and ask for help despite we knew each other. So it's about now I know that we need to have these built up. So if you have a difficult time and you have had a big loss or something have happened to you, it will be natural for you when you then meet your friends and peers. When they ask you, how are you? You will actually give them an honest answer. And if you're not feeling well, you seek out, you're looking out for help. May it be seeing a psychologist or therapist or getting a coach or whatever it would be that you would need, that you because you prepare this in the good times, so you're ready for the challenging times.
Yeah, I suppose one thing that brings to mind there from what you're saying, men especially, and in a I was going to say in a sporting environment or just in general environments, there's a lot of banter takes place, doesn't it? And it can be, I suppose, quite superficial, and they may not, I suppose, deeply connect, if you like. So yeah, some of the strategies there you've shared are so important.
Yes, absolutely. And when we are vulnerable and when we just practice that and practice having honest conversations with people, then we naturally just growing ourselves. And once we become, should I say, familiar and comfortable with being uncomfortable, then this becomes the norm. And that's when we really can tackle it. When things go wrong, when we fall sick or injured, then we go through that in a much easier way.
I would think what happens, and certainly upstairs in your mind, the as you say about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, when you would have like a lot of negative self-talk and a lot of doubt going on, that then changes, and you are probably naturally over a period of time a little bit kinder to yourself when you go through those situations.
Yes, absolutely. Self-care and self-leadership is something that I talk a lot about, and I can see that many leaders are very well aware about that. We need to prepare ourselves because the workplace is perhaps more competitive and more stressful than ever. And especially if I'm looking here at the senior leaders that are running the offices here in Asia, they are perhaps working for an American company and now they have a global role or Asia role. That means that they will be on Zoom meetings, in 3 time zones. It can easily be 16-hour working day. So you've got to be very aware of that. Self-discipline, but also put barriers around yourself and how you should protect yourself and which meetings will you accept, which won't you accept, and escalate this to your boss and your HR. If they are working you around the clock, you just have to say, I won't be able to show up and do the best I can, but I also feel bad to decline these meeting invitations. But do note that it's actually 1 a.m. my time. We need to be that direct and honest with ourselves and our colleagues.
A part of mental toughness is interpersonal confidence. So, in effect, I suppose in a group situation or in different situations, being able to say no and assert ourselves, that obviously is one of the skills that you're talking about there. I'll move on though back to self-care. So yourself now, you're obviously like living in Asia there. You talk about the long days that potentially you may be dragged into working. You're also an Ironman athlete, which is pretty incredible. Something I always wanted to do, and it hasn't happened, unfortunately. How do you manage them both? Because obviously the levels of commitment must be crazy.
Yeah, and I want to also add one part to this of my life, which is then recovery and giving back and charity work and being of service. So I have to balance all of that. And what I was told into when I came into recovery, and I'm now more than 3 years sober, they said that in order to keep this gift of sobriety, you have to give it back to keep it. And what that means is that you have to show up and help others. So as often as I can, and I'm trying to spend at least an hour every day on helping other people who now have then falling into perhaps alcohol addiction or similar addictions, and helping them to show them the way and moving forward. And that can be in one-on-one meetings. Otherwise, I'm also joining meetings wherever I go in the world. And that is what I put first in my calendar. That goes in before anything else. I need to put in a couple of hours every week in giving back to my society and helping others. That's the first thing. And then after that, I put in my training sessions. And where I live now in a triathlon camp here, and I'm here in Phuket, there's 13 sessions a week. So that's going in my calendar. It's there already now until the rest of the year. The rest of the time then I open up for work. And I try to not compromise on this. Of course, occasionally there will be a business trip. There will be exemptions that happens. But I'm trying to really care for myself first, because if I can care for myself and show up also to do some community service, helping others, that means I'm deflating my ego, and I'm happy, I'm feeling grateful because of what I have these days. Then I can show up for work, and then I can be a good leader and be there. And these breaks is useful for me to get some charity work in, some social service, and to get my exercise. And I say that I'm working as a founder and entrepreneur. I'm working basically in my business when I'm sitting in front of my computer and working, but I'm having the CEO role working on my business when I'm out for a bike ride and so on. That's when I come back from that. I have the big ideas.
Yeah, there's something about being on the bike and I suppose some fresh air and just that thinking time you can be very creative to say the least.
Yes, absolutely. So we need to realize that, just because that we sit 10 hours instead of 6 hours in front of the computer in an office, that doesn't mean we get more done, at least not when it comes to quality.
Yeah, most definitely quality over quantity. Now, you talked there about the importance of self-care, and I know I've mentioned this on previous podcasts, and I've asked people to think about that on a scale of 1 to 10. for yourself, where do you put that now then on a scale of 1 to 10 self-care?
I think self-care has to come at a 10, especially where I have been before. I just cannot slip down, because if I'm at a 10 when I'm feeling good, that means that I can handle getting the influenza, the flu, or getting sick, and I take a dip and I can go through that. But if I'm not looking after myself to a 10 in good times, then the dip will just be too low and I cannot afford that.
How do you prevent that 10 slipping to a 6, a 5, a 4, and you sort of losing the good habits that you've currently got in place?
Well, it happens, right? We get sick, we get injured. I had a couple of my bike crashes. There's things happening, and I get sad, and I can easily get a bit depressed and so on. And it takes a while to regroup then. But there's other things I love to do. I love yoga, I love meditation, and these kind of things. So I have a plan B for when things go wrong. I have my sort of wish list and to-do list of things I can do, and meditation especially is a big one. You can be injured and still do meditation, for example, and working on flexibility, stretching, and so on. So in that sense, I'm trying to regroup and find some other hobbies or some things to do, because otherwise my natural go-to will be to work more, and that's never going to be good.
And I'd imagine when you talk about your book, and you're saying there about working more, is that that'll be a common theme, is it, across lots of senior executives and CEOs, where they as you say, that they'll just work longer and longer hours, essentially, especially if they're not maybe happy in their lives?
Yeah, and I think I call myself, when I was looking back in my corporate career, I called myself an anxious overachiever, and I think that is perhaps what drove me to get a scholarship at university, and drove me hard to work perhaps harder, putting in more hours than the rest, and topping a lot of classes therefore. And then I brought this behavior with me in the workplace, just working incredibly hard, and just because I was anxious and I wanted to, get that affirmation, hitting the targets, getting the promotions and so on, and everything that came with that. And that is very common among senior executives, at least what I see here in Asia.
Would you say that drive comes from, I suppose if we're thinking about the goals that you would set, would they be like financially driven and very like extrinsic, maybe wanting to prove yourself to other people as well into the mix?
I would say prove yourself to other people is one, but also then the security fear, and for me, it was because a couple of times I was laid off. Either a company went through a merger acquisition and I was let go, and that was like ripping a carpet under me. Suddenly, I lost everything. I lost my identity with the work. Also, when you're working as an expat abroad, many times your housing, your work permit, your status in the country, and everything is linked to your employment. So if you lose your employment, then you're completely exposed. They take out perhaps your children from the private school that they've been to and stuff like that. And that's what happened to me one time for my son when he was 5 years of age. My company was sold and I was let go. So all those cases gave me a lot of insecurity. And, when you then are in a job, you're so scared that you're going to lose it. And especially if it goes into a season of layoffs, the fear, the anxieties are just building up because it's just so much at stake.
Obviously, like burnout, then I suppose we're talking about burnout to a degree, aren't we? Where you're going to have the emotional and the physical effects. How do you, what advice would you give to a senior executive who feels like they are, they're suffering or they're borderline suffering from burnout?
For me, what I've seen is working with a coach has been the best for burnout. It normally many times means to write down everything you're working with, speaking to someone about it, prioritize some things, putting some things on hold, closing some projects, focusing on what's most important, and then setting some goals there. Having someone who's accountable. It can be a coach, perhaps a mentor, someone who's more senior. And just, again, not keeping it secret, not keeping everything internally for you. Because then once you talk to someone about this and they start asking, okay, I have this issue with, my team here, then the coach will be able to help you to find some solutions. And the solution might be that you need to talk to one of your colleagues and solve it. And I'm personally very aware about this. If I have these negative feelings, if there's something that keep me awake at night, which is rare these days, but if it is, then I write it down and I think immediately, who can I tomorrow call to have a conversation about this, to solve it? We shouldn't go to bed having that feeling of, being anxious, worried, or feeling that we are on the way to burnout. Then we need to talk to someone about this.
In some ways, there's a few things there, a few nuggets you've mentioned there. You've got the social support side of things, and obviously talking to other people. And then you mentioned writing down a few times there. Do you think the actual physical act of just getting a pen and a bit of paper out and writing some of your thoughts down can be, very, very helpful?
Yes, absolutely. I have Post-it notes and pens on my working desk here, but I have them on my bed table as well, and I have the notes as a shortcut on my phone, and I constantly write when I remember something, and it can even be that you surprise yourself when you wake up in the morning. You might have woken up quickly and just written something down, but there it is, and then you can take some action. And again, it's about having that discipline to act on it. And what I learned in recovery was to clean my past, and really go back and make amends and repair things. But once you repaired your past, it's about doing all of this on a daily basis. And we're even asked to, do an inventory list or check at the end of the day before you go to bed, and just write down and see, was it something that, was not right? And then perhaps you sent an email, or maybe you said something to a colleague or a friend that wasn't really nice. Then you have a chance to perhaps send them a message at night saying, I'm sorry for what I sent you today. I give you a call tomorrow and let's have a talk about it. So at least you're going to bed knowing that you cleared your day and you have nothing to feel bad about.
Yeah, no, I like that. Certainly there's a model in psychology which is based around self-determination theory. And one of the basic psychological needs is about relatedness. So essentially being connected to other people, and that's going to help with your psychological well-being. You've touched on that. It's essential ingredient. Nick, look, I've really enjoyed the conversation. You've shared some, fantastic little snippets of advice there for people. Would you be able to share with the listeners 3 key takeaways from what we've talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great speaking with you, David. And what would be the 3 key takeaways? I think the first one is ask for help when needed, and never go to bed with any pain. So again, the thing we discussed here, write it down, whatever it is, and think, who can I have a conversation with? It might be a coach, a mentor, a psychologist, a friend. There must be someone who you can talk to. So that would be the first one. The second one would be about being proactive, about building both your personal and your professional network. So don't wait to when you lose a job or going through a divorce like what I did, but really be proactive about building these networks so that you have them ready for you when perhaps life is throwing you a lemon. Because let's face it, life is a roller coaster, and we will be up and there will be down. So let's be proactive about this. That would be the second one. The third one would be and to be positive in your life and have some goals. And a bit what we spoke about there, then I have my charity work, my social service there, giving back to the community, which means I'm feeling good about myself. Then I have my self-care with my exercise, and I have a lot of goals around that, competitions and so on. That also means that I have a community of people. I'm surrounded by social activities. And then thirdly, have your work there, but balance it then between all of these matters so that you also take care of everyone around you, including your friends and family. So that would be my 3 key takeaways.
That's great advice. There's, I suppose, two things in there which I'm going to pick up on there. You obviously mentioned about goals. A lot of people, I think I've noticed in my work, they're aware about setting goals, but it's as if they don't really know what good goals are, and often a lot of people have the goals in their head, don't they? Do you think, again, it's Like, do you write your goals down? Do you look at your goals on a regular basis? Do you want to just talk through that little process?
Yeah, definitely. And I can recommend a book by Brian Tracy, the American author, about goals. He just make it so simple. And I followed his formula for the last 15 years. And I write my goals not every morning anymore, but at least a few times a month. And it's starting, by dating it and writing something like, if now it's 7 September, I will have written one of my goals. I will have completed Ironman Sweden 2024 by August 19 in 9 hours and 58 minutes. That would be one goal. So it's that specific in the future, starting with I have achieved this. So it's already programming the mind so that I'm there in the future and I've achieved it. So that is definitely what works for me.
That obviously helps you stay on track and not get derailed. And yeah, I mean, I've read, again, different books, and I know there's research in psychology which would agree where you're having your goals written down, reviewing them, refining them on a regular basis, is a big thing. The other one I'm going to pick you up on, you'd mentioned earlier about having a plan B. You talked there about building a network to deal with that. I can see how powerful that is. Working with like real elite athletes, what I tend to find is they're comfortable talking about the plan B, and talking about the potential challenges that they're likely to face when they perform. But a lot of people don't want to go there because they're frightened if they do go there that these things are going to happen. But actually, no, let's have a contingency plan.
Yeah, I like that. We need to, and I have even written in my book, actually, part of the last chapter is have a plan B. We just need to develop that plan B and being comfortable with it. And then we move on from there, because if we can accept the worst case scenario, then everything can be good from there on.
Yeah, and it can provide us with motivation, essentially, to make sure we don't have to rely on plan B if things do go wrong.
Absolutely.
So yeah, fascinating stuff. If you'd like to share with the listeners where they can find you, be it on social media, your book, website, yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. So yeah, my website is nickjonsson.com. That's NICKJONSSON. Or if they're interested in checking out my book, it's on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle, and so on. And it's called Executive Loneliness.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you for your time today, Nick. As I say, I'm sure the listeners will get an awful lot out of it.
Thank you so much, David, and thanks to all the listeners.
Well, that was a thoroughly enjoyable conversation with Nick. Some fascinating insights into the life of a CEO and executive as well as someone, obviously, who's an Ironman athlete. I'd like to wrap things up where we think about self-care. And that question I asked Nick at the end, I'd like you, the listener, to consider yourself. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is self-care to you? And, if you've rated yourself less than a 7, is that actually working for you? If it's more than a 7, are you taking it seriously enough? Do you have things written down? So I'm wondering now if you could also ask the question, what are the 5 fundamental things that I need to put in place to take care of my own psychological well-being? That's right, get a pen and paper out, if you're not driving that is, and make a note of these top 5 self-care ideas. And when you stop writing, I'd like you just to consider the basic psychological needs, which are talked about in self-determination theory, and I've mentioned on the podcast a number of times. So we've got autonomy, and that's a feeling of control. We've got relatedness, which is about being connected to others. And then we've got competence, which is being able to master a task in hand. When you're thinking about self-care and some of the strategies you have in place, are they linking at all to these 3 basic psychological needs? If not, maybe you need to tweak things slightly, or certainly give it some thought. And Nick alluded to the fact that it's not just executives who have very pressurized roles. Certainly, if you look at elite sport, mental health has been on the agenda now for a good while. A good few years, with lots of leading athletes talking about their struggles and their challenges. And football is a sport I work a lot in, and it's associated with big egos, and a sport where banter takes place an awful lot, and sharing your vulnerability hasn't necessarily been a big thing until recently. So it's great to see many professional footballers who a lot of people look up to talking about some of these inner demons that they have and some of their challenges. It goes on to normalize things at the end of the day. It helps us appreciate that these people are humans, they're not robots. And I recently mentioned about football and a new venture that I've got. Keep your eyes and your ears open over the coming weeks, as I'm going to be introducing a new venture called the Football Psychology Hub. Take care. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.